Well, we're back. Hello. How's it going, Alli?
Well, it's late winter. It's Do you know what snowbirding is, Peter?
I
Have you heard the
do.
term?
My
I just
parents used to fly down to Florida and then come back, or actually drive down and come back. They kind of stay up in winter wonderland now, but
so I mean like it was a term I didn't know until I know it. But apparently people don't know what it is, or like I just experienced it for the first time in my life. So right, me and you Midwesterners. I'm from Minnesota, the north. I live in Wisconsin now, even further north, and there's a lot of snow. We are on par for like a record-breaking snow amount this year. But snowbirding is where you leave winter and go somewhere where there is no snow and you avoid it. And let me tell you, it's wonderful. Arizona in the wintertime is a magical place that I think you should experience at some point, and so should our listeners if you haven't ever done it. And yeah, that was pretty magical. Highly recommend.
the Department of Arizona should be paying you right now because well, they had a Super Bowl there too, so
They did. I was in Phoenix for the Super Bowl. I didn't like go to the Super Bowl, but I like it was cool. We could hear the planes from
Mhm.
my uncle's house who lives there, and it was very cool being in like the city. Like when you got to the airport, there was all this Super Bowl signage, and the TSA agents, they were flown in from other like LA, San Francisco, and they were like, "Oh yeah, this isn't our home base." Like, I mean, you could kind of feel that there were so many more people in the area than were normally there, and like it was really, really beautiful
Huh.
to I've never been in a Super Bowl city like when it was happening.
Yeah, I don't think I'm a Bears fan, so I probably won't go to one for a long time, but yeah, it's interesting. And then what else is interesting is in the weather line, right? So obviously I'm in the Chicagoland area and there is not, I think we're on a record low of snow. So there's this weird line somewhere through Milwaukee or something. I don't know, but like y'all getting snow north and we're not getting much
I
at
know.
all. So it's very strange. But something else that we were talking about is we're going to unpack here Caden Ketchman, two-part series. I just love listening to this young man speak and his experiences because he has a truly deep academic sense, but he also has this self-awareness sense that is very unique at somebody for somebody of that age. So where do you want to start with Caden?
Well, there's so many things. I mean, I'll never forget our first episode with Caden when he just made me fall back in love with learning. I know it's just like we love those guests that just really have unique spins on education, and Caden just embodies that all the time. And a couple of things. So I feel like he took us on, this is why I brought up snowbirding, is because he took us on like a little snowbirding adventure out of like what education can and should be and what we can aspire to. But something that I hope Caden hears in this episode that he said, which is this is where his like youthful whims may, catch up to him at some point, is he said, peaking scares me. And I just think about someone like Caden with this vibrance and really super reflective and has everything in front of him that he doesn't need to worry about that. And that I don't know if that messaging is in education or if it's just internal, uh ticker or something like that. But I think when you have a mind like Caden does about learning and life and all of that, that the world is your oyster, and how you approach life is more important than like what you accomplish or your resume or all of this, which he talks about like through writing and through, the admission process in getting into universities and how that like opened his mind. And I think like, that I can see for him that will just carry into his life, but I hope he sees that.
Yeah, yeah. There's a couple points that I'm going to bounce off of your idea there of peaking and Caden's idea of it. I think it's very interesting because I see it a lot with, athletes, right? So some athletes will peak in high school and maybe fizzle out at the next level, and then life happens, right? You get into a routine, and there's depression and there's other things there, which I totally get it. I mean, I've seen it before. um you know and I think it's that you don't transfer that very well, that skill set, that mindset, that lifelong learning into something else. You also see like very good athletes in school, in the high school level, even though they didn't make it to the next level, or to the elite level or wherever their goals were. They are able to shift those skill sets into coaching or different things like that. So for Caden to think about that, I think it's more kind of on, am I challenging myself constantly? And there is a challenge put forth on anybody in high school. It's very scripted, right? It's here it is. Here's what you have to do. You have to win this championship. You have to do very well on this test. You have to, but that's the challenge, right? And I think, one of the things that we just did today, in our career planning course, is we started to go over resumes and portfolios, and we were asking the question, is this person a doer or an achiever? And I was like, that's an interesting question, because I think if you're a doer, then you do peak. You've done it, and then it's over. And then what else is there to do? You're not able to achieve a transition or achieve something and continue. So that kind of goes into our transferable skills and such. So, but again, I think, like you said, the reflectiveness of this young man, if he's able to, or if anybody's able to constantly reflect on what they're going through. I mean, you can reflect on a peak and just say, okay, well, let's go find another mountain, so.
Well, let's go find another mountain.
Yeah.
It's so interesting. My grandpa, who's one of our biggest fans, he is reading this very large, I mean, it's got to be 500 pages plus, poetry book from, I don't actually remember the author, but they're all pieces from this one woman. And it's a lot of reflections. Like, it's basically she went out into the woods and like wrote about something or experienced something, and it was oftentimes from her walks that she would then like get this inspiration to then write another poem. And I think it can be, I can remember being, like 17, 18, thinking like, will I still enjoy quote unquote the same things, years down, or do I always have to do something different? And the answer is like yes and no. Like, your interests change, your hobbies change, like your passions change. But I like what you said there. Like, you can't peak if you just go climb another mountain. If you kind of reframe how you view the experience or the learning opportunity, or like what you can take away from it, then you'll create and do and achieve for life. You won't even have to decide between doing and achieving, because they'll be so integrated in all areas that you won't even take time to like worry about what it is you're doing. You'll just do and create and live and thrive, and like the world will, I don't know. When I think about education, I think that is where it can be so beautiful, right? Where it's just this like beautiful weaving, and it's not so this box and that box. And I think that's what Caden was really trying to get at, in particular with the college essays, and how that exercise really like opened his mind. But right, if that exercise, writing about yourself, opened your mind, imagine like your college experiences and how that's going to open your mind. And then when whenever you get in your career, how that's going to expand your mind. And then whatever you do outside of your career is going to expand your mind. So the possibilities are endless. It's like the framing of it that I think is really important. And it's possibly a missing piece in education, is how are we framing, right? Like, you can put up your daily do now and lesson plan and objective for the day, but like, what's the bigger frame? What's the bigger frame?
I love that that analogy, because I think you know, with the framing of education, when you ask a student, you know, how are you doing in school? What's the answer you're going to get?
I got an
I
A, I got a
get,
B.
yeah, I'm getting good grades, or I've done well on, you know, an SAT or whatever. And I think that's what I kind of get, you know, maybe I'm putting words in Caden's mouth, but I think like maybe he's seeing that as a peak. Like, I hit this. This is not hard for me. But I think the other thing that he also made a very good point of, in the way that he said it, is like a very deep foundation of who he is, right? And then, yeah, if you have that, it's kind of like the climbing gear, right? Like, you need to understand who you are. And through, in that first episode, he was talking about reflective thought and reflective writing. Well, how are you responding, reacting, interacting with the knowledge that you're getting? Why are you, or why are you not doing something, you know? And having that, I feel like that is the base of anything. And I think that's also another piece of education that we're missing in the traditional sense, is because we're just kind of floating around in the middle, trying to figure out, you know, what's happening. There's a bunch of people over there with the A's and the B's, and then there's people who know themselves and don't even try, but they know, like, maybe outside of school they're going. And if we can kind of like put those together, I mean, you start talking about the quote unquote well-rounded student. I don't think it's a well-rounded student. I think it's a well-grounded student, somebody who knows who they are. And again, I think that for me, you know, a student asked me, you know, what is a problem that really makes you angry, because we were talking about this in entrepreneurship today, that you really want to fix. And I'm like, I want every student to walk out of high school knowing their top 3 skills. Like, that's what I want them to know, right? I don't really particularly care for grades. I don't care for, you know, the tests and things like that. However, I know they have their place. I've let that fight go, but like, I really want students to understand what are your top 3 skills at this point. So then you can, again, find another mountain and go on it. So I think, yeah.
I'm thinking about like the first day of my master's program was so transformational for me because, well, as homework leading up to that first class, we had to read the Strengths Finders. I think that's the name of the book.
2.0, yeah.
Yes. And then, and I mean, like, you read it, you got your, you know, your strengths, and then we like deep dove into it. And then they had activities. It was like a full day, you know, I just remember it being a lot of time. I remember we did activities around like, and what they were trying to do without telling you is how you approach these activities were reflections of your strengths. I just remember learning more about myself in that one day about who I am as like a learner and a teacher than I had previously. It's not a small thing to understand your skills and your strengths, but that really requires a deep level of reflection. Like, it's like this input versus like, it can be so passive in education. I mean, I remember going to high school and, you know, sitting down, taking the notes, doing the homework, and there might be days where you are not speaking at all,
Right.
you know, and that's not like, I feel like that's less and less, more and more educators and like the system as a whole is encouraging that voice. But like, just on any one day just could be a heavy lecture day, and you're just literally passively doing a lot of stuff, and there's not a lot of like active thought or engagement or reflection of your point. You're just checking boxes and doing what you're told. I don't know that is, and so then there isn't even like time to think about like what you might be good at, you know, or how that could add to other areas of like it seemed like so truncated. Like, I went to school and I was this person, and then I went to volleyball practice and I was this person, and at home in my family I was this person, and when I was doing this activity I was, you know what I mean? Like, it didn't have seem those skills were woven together, but it took me a wildly long time to figure that out. And I
Right.
think Caden is figuring it out much sooner just because of who he is and his family and background, and then also through doing, what did he say, 43 college essays?
Right. Yeah, I'm sure to this date I probably haven't written that many essays. So that's I don't know if that's a badge or something, but I think, yeah, along with that, the way that, you know, he was talking about checking the box, and he's realizing something on the teacher side that I have had to break out of, and I still fight myself certain days, like, all right, you feel like you're wasting time. The kid's got to do something, da 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 da. You got to keep going. And unfortunately, I think that's a habit that is taught in education that needs to be broken, as educators, right? The one thing when I was creating, when our class was creating rules, which I have classes create their own rules. You know, mind you, these aren't illegal things, you know. We can set off fireworks in the classroom. No, that we don't go there. But like, you know, every class says, you know, can we have some, they call them free days. And when you hear free days, you're like, oh, what? But in those free days, we have conversations, and we just like kind of sit back, and there is a lot of reflection in those days. And I've started to integrate that into, you know, curriculum, because, you know, I have the opportunity to teach entrepreneurship. So the students are coming up with a problem that they want to solve through a business that is something that they can toy around with during a semester, which is, you know, that, you know, you can't create a car in a semester, but you can play around with little things and try to figure it out. And again, just today we had the conversation about, you know, some students were like, I don't know if it's going to work. I'm like, me neither. And then I started thinking about, okay, well, here's Alli here doing this in, you know, science classes. It's the same thing. You don't know what's going to happen, right? So you tell me, is if this, but they're, you know, they're always like, well, I don't think anybody's going to buy it. And I'm like, sorry, I don't care what you think. Let's try it, right? And then let's figure it out, right? I didn't mean, not, I don't say that in a mean way, but, you know, and they struggle because they want the answer, because that's the check the box that Caden is talking about.
Yep. And failure is, it's not the way. It's not like celebrated.
Mm-hmm.
You know, right? I failed a test. Yay.
Yeah.
No, that's not, you know, that's not the response. But you learn, if education shifted in a way where the failures is what moved you forward, and you could like focus on instead like the growth from that quote unquote failure, I think the reflective piece that Caden really gets at would grow exponentially in our K through 12,
Mm-hmm.
you know, particularly middle school and high school levels, if that was allowed. Like, you know, it's not necessarily like where you're starting from, it's where you grow
Right.
into. And so, yeah, if this student's product failed, cool, they probably learned a lot about maybe why.
Yeah.
And that's a great thing in business and in life, you know. Man, if I just quote unquote sat on all of my failures and just didn't, and just like saw them as like, oh, you know, I'll never do anything else in my life, oh my gosh, I wouldn't be even a quarter of the person I am today. And it's a beautiful thing. Now telling that to a 17-year-old 16-year-old, you know, like meh. But part of it is that they are in a system where that you would have to like tease that out, you know,
Right.
from the very, very beginning. It's like in it part of the indoctrination, right?
Mm-hmm.
With like grades and how you're doing. And so it's like, if you're like, wow, I failed this test, I have so much to learn. And that was like the response, that would be wonderful. But kids are like shamed into
Right.
failure. And it shouldn't be like that.
I said this to the class today, because a lot of them, I mean, they struggle with the thought process through being an entrepreneur or just starting a business or trying something like that, because they don't know the outcome. I don't know the outcome, and I think they know that I don't know the outcome, and that scares them even more, which is okay. But it was funny today, and I said this. And it kind of to the point of coming from, you know, what Caden was saying, even going back to Kareem when he was like, dude, if we know the answers, then why are we even here, right? And I told the kids, I'm like, you're going to wish we had tests in this class by the time we get done with it. And the kids were like, it was almost like I like, you know, pulled out a sword and like, and it was kind of funny because they will wish they will want a test by the end. Some of them, a lot of them will, because they are still fighting against that habit of checking the box. As Caden puts it, you know, the test really is not indicative of who you are. It's really what you experience and what you take from that experience. And that's a very individualistic look at it. And I caught myself saying that, and I was like, wow, that was a pretty good thing. I mean, you guys are going to wish you wanted tests. And they looked at me like, I don't. And then a couple of them kind of got it in their heads. They're like, oh, yeah. So that's, I think, the performance piece, whatever people reflect on the performance of learning that has happened, is something that we can take away from Caden. And so shifting gears, well, now you have this automation and AI. So I think that's actually we're going to go into that, but I think that actually is going to play deeper into the role of students becoming more humanistic and becoming reflective on what's happening, because I don't know if AI will be able to, I should never say I don't know if it will be able to, but is it going to be able to reflect for you, Alli, like your own learning journey or what you have done? I don't know. I mean, it can project something out there. We're going to dive in.
Can it reflect? Can it relate and be empathetic? Does it have feelings? I don't know. Chat GPT and AI it's affecting education, and we're certainly hearing all about it. I mean, I feel like you have to be living under a rock to not have heard about it at this point. But it will be interesting to see, you know, where our next couple guests are seeing it, experiencing it, how you're experiencing it, how the world is experiencing it, particularly in the educational realm, and where it could go, because it's definitely now part of the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not likely going away. You know, like, it's interesting when being an educator, Kagan strategies. Have you heard of them?
Yep.
Okay.
I went through the training.
Right. Okay, perfect. And I remember very distinctly being in like a teacher orientation and them doing Kagan strategies, and a lot of teachers like rolling their eyes like, oh, this is just the latest trend, you know, it's going to go away in a couple years, we're never going to use it, like, we're just doing it to check the box.
Mm-hmm.
But what's interesting with Chat GPT and just AI software is I don't hear that.
Yeah.
I don't hear that. I hear like more like, how is this going to change everything? Yeah. Not if, or it's going to go away. Just like, how do we even deal with this? There's so much unknown. And so I'm excited to dive into this topic more with you and our guests over the coming weeks.
Absolutely. One of the guests is a previous student of mine, and then another guest is an amazing technologist who has kind of worked through time management and blockers and really understanding the humanistic approach, and how he is now and a co-founder is putting together how AI can help answer those questions for youth as they go through whatever they want to go through. It's very interesting. I'll leave you with this before final thoughts on this episode. A lot of conversation out there around AI is that it is what needed or needs to happen even beyond a pandemic to shift this system that has been somewhat stagnant. I won't say completely stagnant, because I think there is some changes in education, but to make a major shift to kind of, it's a 1-2 punch with the pandemic and then AI coming right through. I'm going to leave that there and throw out final thoughts from you, Alli.
I think you said it best in this episode with you'll never peak if you just go climb a new mountain. That's the takeaway for me.
I like that. I surprised myself with that, actually. That just kind of came out of there. Occasionally I surprise myself. So
perfect.
Well, thank you all for hanging out with us today. We got 2 amazing guests coming up. Yes, for those who've been asking, are you going to talk about ChatGPT? Here we go. So stay tuned. We'll catch you next time on the Disrupt Education Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us on this week's episode of the Disrupt Education Podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe so you never miss an episode.
Are you ready to disrupt the educational arena you're a part of? For more ways to get involved in the work we do here at Disrupt Education, check us out at disrupteducation.co or find us on LinkedIn at Peter Hostrawser or Alli Privitt.
Our mission here is to help facilitate and amplify changes in the educational system through local initiatives and help you scale them into community movements. Our building network of disruptors in education are working to move beyond scores and grades as the only measure for student learning. If your school district, college, campus, or organization is looking for facilitators of this work, reach out on our website or social media.
And if you have any thoughts or feedback on this week's episode or any episode, we'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep pushing the boundaries, taking risks, and most importantly, disrupting education.